Okay, folks. Hopefully this is coming through. I don't know if anybody is online and is checking the Hangouts on here and see if the feed is coming through, seeing as Martin had to dash off to another session. But I'm, as introduced, Rodri from the OU, and I'm responsible for deploying Google Apps and a number of other things in university. What I'm going to do is I'm going to give you kind of a highlights of the thing in the time that we've got available. What I've done on the program pages on the website is this slide's got a series of speaker notes that you might want to look at for more context after the fact. And there's also a short video section of something that we did earlier on in the year, which is actually a walkthrough of some of the work that we've done, particularly with Moodle. So what I'm just going to do is I'm just going to give you a bit of a heads up as to where we've got to. There is public information available, a very quick overview on that public website there. And what we've done is been running since an early evaluation exercise in 2009, and the primary driver was to try and get a replacement email service for our students, because we were decommitting from an open text first class text conferencing system at the same time as we were moving into using Moodle for supporting our online teaching and learning. So at that point, the main driver was to actually find a replacement for email. But I have to say, with the Open University students, 95% of them already have their own email because they're adult learners and they've already got some other provision. So what we were doing is we were wanting to move it to more of an optional basis. So it's not we're moving everybody over, we're not transitioning like a lot of you have been doing in your institutions. It's been very much elective for the students to opt in if they want to, and then sign up to Google Apps on that basis. We do need to make sure that where possible, we do account for students' preferences regarding walled gardens, making sure that they know that the access to the systems is as easy as possible. They don't have to go signing up for things left, right and centre. So single sign-on was also quite important to us, which was implemented at quite an early stage. And as you can see in the little blue bubbles, or the star shapes at the top, that was kind of how we ramped up our student numbers. So in the early days, we did have a pilot of about 2,000 students, and it increased, once that was successful enough, to about 6,000, and then towards the end of this period, anyway, we're looking at, it was about 9,000 students. And this was all purely personal usage, getting some information from the students as to how they were using it, at the same time as planning for how we could use it in a curriculum context. Because while Google Mail and Google Calendar and all those other tools, personal information management, might be useful on a student basis, it's not really all that exciting to us as an academic institution. We were really more interested in things like docs and sites and how we could use that in a curriculum context. So we had to do a lot of preparation work. We had to work with a lot of university policies with regarding to staff having to be on Exchange. So we couldn't actually have staff using email on the Google system. So we've had to do a very interesting mixed economy of the two to try and pull this off, and I'll come back to that. But essentially what we started off with was student usage. And taking some of Google's advice, we did that through a start page in terms of getting them single sign-on through to the system. I suppose a lot of you have done the similar kind of thing. Just a quick start page where you can advertise any changes in the service, link through to any of the guidance that you've got or guidance that you're linking through to Google, and just try and make that thing as seamless as possible, from, in our case, from the student portal through to Google. And at the moment, we've got about 24,000 students on the system. In terms of moving forward towards the curriculum side of things, the early adoption of Google Apps was pretty much out of the box. One of our kind of flagship courses, or modules as we're calling them now, TU100, which is called My Digital Life, the idea behind that was that actually to introduce students to computing, introducing themselves to presenting themselves online, introducing to cloud computing ideas, mobile computing, also trying to take advantage of some physical bits of kit. And what we've done there is we've blended a lot of online learning approaches, some of which were asynchronous, some of which were real-time or synchronous, and also then try and bring in a kind of the physical element with what we've called the sense board, which, well, William's got the one I had, which is actually a physical bit of kit which connects to OU's sense system, which is based on MIT's Scratch, which is also App Inventor, kind of an evolution of that. So we've got a lot of things that are going on in this module, and Google is one of those things, but what we're doing is we're introducing it through the curriculum. It's not something that's just bolted on and dropped in, it's something that's been introduced through the process of this module. And there's a reason for me actually stressing that, and I'll come back to that in a minute. So what we did was, in in the very kind of early stages, and I think week 3 of this module, then Google Sites was introduced, and in the same way that students tend to introduce themselves to one another, they used to use things like resumes in terms of online systems. Well, now they can actually create a Google Sites page, which just is a very simple explanation about who they are, what they do, any information they want to volunteer. And then it moves on a little bit more to how to actually structure that, how to use some HTML, how to embed some images. So it's very much a kind of a guided walkthrough, similar to the kind of advice that you'd see online, in fact on Google's help pages as well. But moving forward then, a little bit later on in the module, it was actually introducing these level 1 students, first year students, to working with spreadsheets online. And then a little bit later was actually making use of Google Talk and comparing instant messaging approaches. So again, trying to see how, they're trying to bring students with us in terms of their engagement online, because in some cases this would be quite new to some of our adult learners. And then towards the end of the whole module, it would actually be using Google Sites, as it says there, to teach website creation, Google Docs to teach spreadsheets, but also to try and get across the idea that there are differences in terms of using wikis to collaborate and Google Docs to collaborate. So some of the real-time elements really that come forward with Google Docs are a strength, but wikis are actually the thing that's being used by the university if there's any kind of formal requirement around trying to know what an individual has contributed to a group effort. So wikis are actually kind of the more formal approach, and then Google Docs are now starting to come in and being, if you like, a co-drafting approach to working in the curriculum area. And later on, iGoogle was brought in for them to exploit these gadgets, and then Google Talk, as I've said, for instant messaging. So from that now, that's the first level course. Other technology modules are now looking at bringing in some of the other tools that are available, including things like Scholar. Well, that's not really a Google Apps thing. Google Reader we added in. Google Maps, again, they don't really need an account, but there are some aspects to that they can use. And as I mentioned, App Inventor and App Engine are of particular interest to the higher level technology courses. So all of those are being investigated. They're not live yet. So level 1. The other part of delivering materials is, if you don't know the Open University, we've got a lot of associate lecturers who actually deliver our tutorials. So the material is created centrally in Milton Keynes generally, and then it's delivered by tutorials. And what the tutors were doing was originally, when they were actually going and preparing their own tutorial materials, they'd actually have maybe their own website and they'd put together a collection of things that they'd used which other people might find useful. That then turned into something that had been curated by a member of the central team to actually then share that good practice around as they went through the first presentation. But quite interestingly, they all decided amongst themselves, the tutors and the central staff, to actually move everything onto Google Docs and actually use that for sharing. So it's not just going to be working with the students, it's actually also used for sharing materials between staff to try and get, again, this best practice in terms of tutorials. The other example is openings, and by I mean openings, it's to try and get students with no prior qualifications up to university level standard. So one of the first things that we need to do with those openings courses is introduce people to some of the concepts, like starting with maths in this case, and a similar kind of approach in terms of bringing in the use of spreadsheet, bringing the students with us, introducing the tools as we're going along. But in this case, it was done through use of screencasts in a large way. Now, I'm going to pause there because that's the first year experience. That's trying to bring people in with us and introduce Google along with some other concepts, and in some cases introducing technology and working online. We can't really do that for all of our modules, and I'm sure lots of you can't do that in your institutions either. So what we needed to have was a situation where we can actually drop Google in and actually they can get on with the activity without realizing they're using Google or realizing that actually they're getting over some IT hurdle, because we do get a lot of feedback from our adult learners, some of whom are what we used to call leisure learners, who really don't want to be learning an IT product to actually get to the learning material or get to the learning objective of that course. So one of the things that we needed to do was to actually see if we could make this a little bit more seamless, a little bit more embedded, to try and get past maybe some of the organizational difficulties that people find with Google Docs. Docs list navigation, sharing is a non-trivial thing for some of our students. So trying to do that through our VLE, which is Moodle 2 in this case, Moodle 2.2, that was the kind of the driver for the next phase of preparation for curriculum use. So as you can see here, there is an example of a spreadsheet that's embedded within a VLE page. That's using Docs APIs in the background. So what actually it's been set up to do is Moodle has all of the group information, so it knows who the tutor is and who their and the students in that tutor group. It then sets up the permissions for a document, and when the students want to engage with that, it then makes that access available to them through the VLE. It puts it straight into Google. The OU owns that document, and then the students can all collaborate together in that group setting. Now, I'm not going to have any time to kind of go through the different examples of this, and that's what that video is on the program that we've all got on our website. But suffice it to say, we had an example for a spreadsheet. We've done the same thing for a document. We couldn't quite do the same thing for a presentation, which is a bit of a shame, because at the moment the API tools for the presentation weren't as evolved as those for documents and spreadsheets. So while you can edit a document and you can edit a spreadsheet, you can only get a read-only handout view of the presentation via this approach at the moment. So that's something we want to see change. Ideally, we'd like to be able to edit, but we might just go for a slide deck if we can get that. And the other benefit of doing it in this way is that because we can't have every single member of staff having a Google account for various policy reasons, if there are staff who are line managers of tutors who haven't got an account or might not be actively part of that tutor group, we can again use a slight difference in terms of the way the API is configured to give them a read-only view of the work in progress. So you can get an overview of what's going on even though you can't edit it. So again, that's something I've put in the walkthrough video. So if you're interested in that sort of things, you can have a look at that. The other part of what we wanted to do was to try and deliver some of our portfolio support, I suppose, through Google. And in doing a lot of business analysis around this, we had an internal system called MyStuff, which was open sourced a while back. And we needed to move away from that in terms of ongoing commitment for resource. So we looked to Google Apps as being one of the bit players in providing a tool set of things that students, that the curriculum teams could use. So in one case, I mean, if you're doing some fairly basic unstructured reflection, well, you can use a blog. But there are some things that Google, through creating this portfolio activity, we can actually get a much more structured approach to things. And this example just in front of you here is just a way that module teams can actually create a preset structure. So it could be a collection of folders or something which could have proformas or templates within them, and the students then effectively fill those in. And the way they engage with it is, and they actually just see this within the VLE, they click on the link, they can either export it as a zip, or they can export it as Google Docs, and then they can then take that on and start to work with it in that way. So that's kind of a preset scaffold, as we've called it. And the other thing is setting up a portfolio of tasks so that there's structured reflection. So we prompt the students through a series of simple forms. The students fill that information in within the form, within the VLE. The data is saved on the VLE, and then if they want to export it for synthesizing, prettifying it, or doing whatever they want to do, reconfiguring the document, they can export it and put it into Google as some supplementary evidence as part of their portfolio. So we're not having a portfolio system, but we're trying to cope with maybe 80% of the requirements of what was coming through for portfolio usage, which was largely structured reflection, document storage, repository, and sharing of material. So those are kind of the key things. Anything to do with workflow, anything to do with kind of responding to external criteria that you might have in nursing or in teaching, well, that's still something that we've still got to work out whether PebblePad or Mahara has actually got a part to play there. So I'm rushing through, I know, but hopefully you can reflect on some of the detail if you need to. So the original plan was in 2012, we would actually be moving, having done all of this work, to a basis where we'd be rolling out to lots of different curriculum teams some of the Google apps out of the box, but also some of the integrated tools with our VLE. And we started with T100. They have about 2,000 students every presentation, which is twice a year. So those numbers are increasing a lot. Students are sharing amongst themselves. That would be a good idea to get hold of a Google account. They might want to be using it for getting hold of offers, to be honest. I mean, if they've got a something.open.ac.uk account, and it means they can get hold of offers. But we've actually been looking at the active use of accounts, and it is going up in relation to some of the tutorial activities that I mentioned earlier. But we were hoping that we'd get much more headway with accessibility by the end of 2011 and reviewing that than we currently have done. So what we've had to do is we've had to reevaluate the whole thing. So we've got to a point now where we've developed a lot of these integrations. Those have been open sourced. We've developed different ways of working with Google and the advice that we need to give to module teams, and we've got increasing numbers of modules wanting to use that out of the box. We've added mobile support into the picture through the mobile web anyway. But what we're having to do is keep it at a fairly small scale for the OU, and also try and put things on hold in terms of the wider adoption of people just dropping Google in and then running off and running ahead with it. So we've had to take a bit of a pause where we're effectively in a steady state until we've got some key issues to do with accessibility sorted. So it's really good to hear those messages at the start of the day, but we need to see those convert into actual supported changes to particularly the docs list, which was a problem for navigation, and also there were some issues that our accessibility experts have looked through and fed back to Google that we do need to see improved in those docs tools before we can just hand on heart say to all of our module teams, you can go off and use it. So it's very much at the moment there needs to be alternates in place. So if you're going to use docs or something, then students could use zip export, they could use Microsoft Office or OpenOffice or whatever. If you're doing sites, well, they could use WordPress, but there are accessibility issues with that as well. So we've just got to make sure we have got those reasonable adjustments in place. And of course, as a distance learning institution, it's a little bit more difficult for us to anticipate and respond to students, so we have to plan it in where we can. So those are kind of the timelines around that. The other integrations I just want to briefly mention is, I think we heard earlier on today that Calendar in particular, and also some of the other export functions. Moodle 2 has natively got built in a Google export function. Now that has been a little bit broken of late apparently with the latest code release, but essentially it will use kind of an RTF conversion engine to get some stuff into Google. So images sometimes don't come through very nicely, but there is a function in place that we build on. We also built in a way that our core curriculum study planner, that's done on a week-by-week basis, so students can click on a button at the bottom of that and then export and synchronize that calendar with Google Calendar. So it's not just a case of an iCal file which is dumped off onto whatever system they want to use. If they're using Google, it will keep those in sync, so any tutorial data advertised as they go through their study, it makes sure that those are in sync. So again, that's something that was released. And through this website, just to finish, the Duals blog, Distributed Open University Learning Systems, wonderful abbreviation, that's where we've open sourced a lot of our material. It's also where we've open sourced a lot of the GIST project to do with gadgets. So another side of what we've done is to make sure that if students want to engage with their learning materials, they don't have to do it through the VLE, they can access it through different areas such as iGoogle, potentially Facebook. And by using gadgets and developing a number of those that link through Moodle to the Open University systems, then there are a lot of tools that are available to students, which we're going to roll through into the next phase of personalization with our students. But seeing as Neil is here, if you want to know any more about the gadgets, then he knows a lot more about them than I do, so if you want to explore that a bit further, then please do. But all of the code that we've done should be up there in its latest version. There are some Moodle core changes which need to be addressed. But that information is there, and hopefully you found this useful, and maybe we've got a chance for a couple, one question maybe?
I think we'll probably have to take...
Okay, so that's fine, I can take questions afterwards, no problem.
But thanks very much to
Alright, thank you.
Do come and find him in the coffee break if you want to know more.